Grim. This is your Grim Dispatch for the evening of December 1st. Now, look, I'm not here tonight to preach. I'm here because just days ago, a 20-year-old mom in uniform died on a D.C. sidewalk. And this fall, the U.S. started sinking suspected narco boats with lethal force, and now the Senate wants war crime hearings. And of course, the headlines are calling it murder. This isn't politics anymore. This is about who decides what keeps your kids breathing. November 26th, late afternoon, just off of Farragut Square, steps from the White House, Ramanula Lockenwall walked up on 2 National Guard troops and opened fire. Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, only 20 years old, takes multiple rounds and dies the next day. And Andrew Wolf, 24, is on a ventilator fighting to live. That's the reality. And the rest is just paperwork. He entered in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome, and reports say asylum was approved under the Trump administration this April. Some officials claim he overstayed, and other outlets report the asylum. The only non-disputed point is this: he fired and 2 guardsmen went down in our capital. Now let's fast forward to the water. Since early September, the U.S. military has carried out over 20 strikes on suspected drug boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Boats running dark, extra fuel, armed decks. Patrol planes track them, warnings, engines disabled, and then missiles. More than 80 dead across the campaign, at least 2 survivors in the latter incident. The numbers are not rumor, they're repeated across briefings and reporting. The administration calls the operation lethal kinetic strikes against designated narco-terror groups. The critics are calling them extrajudicial killings, and that's the tension at this point. The strike that lit the fuse was September 2nd. Reports from the Washington Post and CNN say there was a follow-up strike, survivors in the water, and then a second hit that killed them. Pete Hegseth calls that fake news. Every action was lawful under U.S. and international law, approved by lawyers up and down the chain. The Pentagon's public line called the narrative completely false. And oversight is now in motion. Senator Roger Wicker and Jack Reed, bipartisan, pledged vigorous oversight. And good old Senator Mark Kelly went on national TV and said they'll hold public hearing and put people under oath. And then over on the House side, Rep. Mike Turner said if survivors were deliberately targeted, that would be an illegal act. So the question is now formal, not rhetorical. Zoom out to the scale. This fiscal year's cocaine seizures sit at around 510,000 pounds. Billions of dollars in street value. That's not an abstraction. That's product that won't hit a high school parking lot or a freshman dorm. Yeah. The administration says that's the mission. Close the gap, kill the narco-terrorist, stop the poison. Of course, legal scholars are going to push back. The suspected smugglers are civilians and not combatants, and lethal force without due process breaks both domestic and international law. 2 visions of safety and 2 definitions of war colliding off our coast. And here is where the argument gets real. Every senator calling for hearings walks past armed security. Every cardinal invoking murder sleeps behind walls guarded by men willing to do violence on their behalf. You and I don't get those layers. We get the 2 a.m. call that does or doesn't come, the kid who makes it home or doesn't. We live with outcomes, not press releases. In the public mood, well, a Reuters Ipsos poll says only 29% of Americans support killing suspected traffickers without trial. And that number matters. It tells you the country is split between the instinct to stop the poison at the source and the instinct to preserve process even when the clock is running. Politicians read polls. Cartels read weather and fuel logs. Only one of them has the right to change your life. So let's lay the choice plainly. If the allegation is true, survivors killed in a second strike, that's a line in law you can't cross. If the allegation is false, you still have a campaign that kills suspected traffickers on the open water. Either way, the boats stop running because they sink, or the boats keep running because hearings slow the hand that strikes. Which outcome keeps your kid breathing tomorrow morning? For me, that's the only test that matters. In the DC shooting, it's the sidewalk version of the same test. Vetting, asylum, parole, prior service with U.S. partner forces, clean records until they aren't. Those are the inputs. A young mother dead and another guardsman clinging to life. Those are the outputs. Policies written for marble halls collide with the reality of 2 uniforms bleeding on city streets. You can't argue, you can argue definitions later, but the family can't. So here's where I stand. I'll lay it bare. If the choice is 14 cartel mules at the bottom of the ocean or one more American teenager zipped in a body bag, I know where I stand. But I also know the law draws lines. And if survivors were deliberately killed, that line was crossed. And that's why oversight matters. Not to grandstand, but to draw the boundary in daylight, so men who do the fighting aren't left guessing in the dark. So from here, watch 3 levers. First, Congress does vigorous oversight. Become scheduled hearings with sworn testimony and released footage, or is it just letters and pressers? Second doctrine, does the Pentagon codify rescue and recover after a strike as reporting suggests happened post-September? And third, the campaign, do numbers, strikes, seizures, deaths, survivors keep moving, or does the tempo drop under scrutiny? Those answers tell you whether the next boat sails, the next missile flies, or whether the next teenager lives or dies. Tonight isn't about your feelings, it's about your decisions. The Senate gets hearings, the cartel gets lawyers and fuel. Your kid gets whatever's left on the street after policy meets reality. So decide whose side you're on before the next load ships out. Then live with that decision. When the wind howls, the roads vanish, and the phone either rings or stays silent. Please drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. The fire is being prepared. Elder Fire Collective is coming. I'm preparing it as we speak. One day you'll be able to walk with us. Thank you.